It was a rainy and cold night in Manchester, the kind of night when the city seems darker and quieter. Emily was alone in her apartment, wrapped in a blanket and holding a cup of hot tea, trying to warm up while the wind howled outside. The sound of raindrops hitting the windows was her only company. The glow of her phone broke the silence when a notification popped up, a video shared in a friend's group that she was part of. Curious, Emily unlocked her phone and saw an enigmatic message accompanied by a link. The text was direct and unsettling. "You need to see this. It's something you don't see every day." With a mix of skepticism and curiosity, Emily tapped on the link. The screen of her phone immediately filled with the image of a macabre ritual. The video was of poor quality, but the images were clear enough to cause discomfort. The scene showed a circle etched into the ground with a substance that looked like blood, surrounded by hooded figures moving slowly around it. Emily tried to figure out what was happening, but the atmosphere of the video was oppressive and disturbing. The figures, in their dark robes, chanted in an unknown language, their voices echoing with a sinister tone that seemed to penetrate the screen. The camera swayed from time to time, revealing flashes of ancient symbols carved into the surrounding walls, their shapes seeming to move and twist in a supernatural way. The climax of the video came when one of the figures lifted an ancient leather-bound book, its pages opened to reveal glowing and disturbing symbols. The text seemed to pulse with dark energy, and the glow of the pages illuminated the figures' faces with a spectral hue. The words spoken by the hooded figure resonated with an intensity that felt almost magical, a voice whispering promises of power and darkness. As the video approached its end, a sense of panic began to overtake Emily. The circle on the ground seemed to come alive, and the camera briefly focused on one of the figures staring directly at the lens, its eyes glowing with a supernatural light. Fear set in for Emily as the image abruptly darkened, and the video ended with a disturbing echo of the whispered words. Emily sat in the darkness of the room, her heart racing and the tea forgotten in her hands. The video had no information about the origin or purpose of the ritual. It was just a recording with no credits or context. The feeling of unease was palpable, and Emily couldn't shake the thought that there was something more behind those images, something that was watching her, waiting for her. As the rain continued to fall, Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. The video was not just entertainment. It seemed like a message, a warning, or something even more sinister. Unknowingly, she had been drawn into a mystery that challenged logic and safety, and what started as trivial curiosity was about to turn into a terrifying nightmare. The next morning, Emily woke up with the feeling that something was out of place. The rain had stopped, but the city still seemed shrouded in a thick fog that gave the streets a sinister aura. As she got ready for work, she couldn't shake the image of the previous night's video from her mind. During breakfast, Emily noticed her phone was flooded with messages. Most were from friends commenting on the bizarre video, but there was one from her friend Sarah, asking to meet later. Still shaken, Emily decided to go to work as usual, trying to focus on her tasks. At the office, things began to feel strange. As the morning went on, Emily had the sense that she was being watched. At first, she thought it was just the nervousness from the video, but the feeling persisted. She couldn't help but notice furtive glances from colleagues who were usually friendly, and some people whispered as she passed. The atmosphere felt charged, as if everyone knew something she didn't. On her way home, Emily decided to take a detour through the park near her apartment. The sky was clear, but the park seemed particularly desolate and silent. As she walked, she noticed something peculiar, a series of strange marks on the ground, similar to the symbols she had seen in the video. They were just superficial scratches, but their resemblance to the ritual symbols made her heart race. When she got home, Emily found an unknown envelope under her door. The envelope was empty except for a small folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper and read the handwritten words, "You saw what you shouldn't have. Now you're on the list." The message was direct and threatening, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Desperate, she called Sarah to confirm their meeting. When Sarah arrived, the concern on her friend's face was evident. Emily told her about the envelope and the strange marks in the park. Sarah, worried, suggested that Emily go to the police department to report what she had found. At the police station, Emily encountered an even more unsettling scenario. The attendant seemed strangely reserved and, after hearing her story, asked her to wait. The wait was long and agonizing, and with each passing moment, Emily felt she was spiraling into increasing paranoia. Finally, a detective came to speak with her. The conversation was brief and evasive. The detective seemed more interested in ending the conversation than investigating. When Emily left the station, she felt as if nothing had been resolved, and the sensation of being watched intensified. As she headed home, Emily began to wonder if she was going crazy or if something truly sinister was unfolding around her. The message in the envelope and the marks in the park weren't just warning signs. They were evidence that something deeper and more threatening was at play. The city of Manchester, usually familiar and safe, now seemed shrouded in a fog of mystery and imminent danger. Emily decided she needed to better understand the context of the video and the disturbing messages she was receiving. If the city was hiding some dark secret, perhaps the key to unraveling the mystery lay in Manchester's own history. The next morning, she ventured to the city's central library, an imposing stone building that seemed to carry centuries of stories. While searching for books on the city's hidden history, Emily found an old volume, bound in worn leather, titled Manchester, Legends and Mysteries. The book was covered in dust, as if it hadn't been touched in ages. She pulled it from the shelf and began to leaf through the yellowed pages. The urban legends of Manchester were as fascinating as they were disturbing. Emily read about the infamous Mill of Spirits, an old mill that had been abandoned after a series of unexplained events and mysterious deaths. It was said that the place was haunted by entities that had never found rest. Another story was about the Circle of Darkness, a secret sect that, according to rumors, performed ancient rituals to summon evil forces. As Emily delved deeper into the book, she found a section dedicated to witchcraft. The text spoke of a turbulent period in the 17th century when Manchester was engulfed in witch hunts and brutal executions. There was a legend of a powerful witch who was said to have been burned at the stake and whose soul, according to popular belief, still wandered the city seeking revenge. With the book in hand, Emily decided to explore some of the mentioned locations. First, she headed to the Mill of Spirits. The site was now overgrown and in ruins, with a palpable sense of abandonment. Walking among the broken walls and moss-covered floor, Emily felt a chill down her spine, as if she were being watched. The atmosphere was oppressive, and every sound seemed amplified. The rustling of leaves and the whisper of the wind made the experience even more unsettling. Her next destination was the old fairground, where it was believed the Circle of Darkness held its ceremonies. The place was now a park, but Emily felt a tension in the air, as if the shadows of the past still lingered there. She found symbols carved into ancient stones and began to make connections with the symbols she had seen in the video. The final stop was the old chapel, where the witch was supposedly executed. The chapel was in ruins, but still held a dark aura. Emily explored the site, looking for any clue or trace that might explain the video and the threatening message. At the back of the chapel, she found an ancient altar covered in dust and a thin layer of dirt. On the altar was a symbol that matched exactly what she had seen in the video. With her heart racing and the feeling that she was becoming more entangled in something larger than she had imagined, Emily realized that Manchester's history was intertwined with the mystery that was tormenting her. Each place she visited seemed to point to a hidden and dangerous truth, and she was beginning to understand that her quest for answers was leading her down a much darker path than she had expected. Emily felt she was plunging into an abyss of mysteries and dangers. The legends and historical sites of Manchester had provided clues, but she still didn't fully understand what she was up against. Determined to find answers, she began investigating the role of witches and the nature of the rituals shown in the video. With the help of some old sources, Emily discovered a hidden group of witches who, contrary to the malevolent descriptions of witchcraft, practiced a form of magic intended to protect and heal. These witches were known as the Guardians of Light, a sect that hid in the shadows to avoid persecution during the witch hunts. Emily found an old diary in an antique shop, written by one of the last survivors of this order. The diary mentioned a Council of Shadows, a rival group of witches who used black magic to manipulate and control, in contrast to the goodness and protection of the Guardians. These evil witches were willing to use any means to gain power and influence, and the ritual in the video seemed to be part of their efforts to achieve even greater control. Determined to gather more information, Emily searched for any sign of the Guardians of Light. Her search led her to a small bookstore specializing in occultism, where she found an elderly and enigmatic woman named Agatha. Agatha was one of the last Guardians, hidden in plain sight, and upon hearing about the video and the strange marks, she was immediately alarmed. Agatha revealed that the Guardians had maintained a fragile balance between good and evil for centuries, protecting the world from the dark influences of the malevolent witches. The ritual Emily had seen was one of the methods used by the Council of Shadows to disrupt this balance and unleash dark forces that could destroy everything sacred. Emily learned that the Guardians were in a constant struggle against the Council of Shadows, which had infiltrated various spheres of power and influence. The evil forces had the ability to camouflage and deceive, making their fight even more difficult. Agatha explained that the video Emily had seen was a desperate call from the Guardians, an attempt to alert those who could see and understand the imminent threat. The conversation with Agatha was not only revealing, but also filled with tension. The old witch revealed that the true battle was about to begin and that Emily, in some way, was now at the center of this conflict. What had seemed like simple curiosity had turned into a massive responsibility. The Guardians needed allies, and Emily, now aware of the dangers and what was at stake, was called upon to play a crucial role in the fight against the Council of Shadows. Emily's fear and anxiety intensified as she grasped the gravity of the situation. She was immersed in a world of ancient magic, hidden secrets, and a war between forces that even the city of Manchester could not have imagined. The reality was darker and more dangerous than anyone could have predicted, and the only way to survive was to confront the threat head-on and fight alongside the Guardians of Light. The weight of the revelations Emily had received seemed almost unbearable. Now, with an understanding of the true nature of the conflict between the Guardians of Light and the Council of Shadows, the reality around her began to crumble. The sense of imminent danger intensified as strange and threatening events began to occur with alarming frequency. Emily could barely sleep, haunted by the feeling of being watched. The city, once familiar and safe, now seemed like a labyrinth of shadows and hidden threats. In one of the few calm moments she had, she received an anonymous message on her phone that said, "You're closer than you think. Be careful who you trust." It was on a particularly silent night, when Emily was alone in her apartment, that the real terror began. Without warning, the electricity flickered and went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. Emily struggled to light a candle, and as the weak light illuminated the room, she began to hear a disturbing sound, a whisper that seemed to come from inside the walls. Fear took hold of Emily when she realized that the doors and windows were locked. The whisper grew louder, escalating into a cacophony of voices, blending together in an unknown language. She tried to calm herself and check if she was imagining things, but the sense of a malignant presence intensified. Then, something touched her shoulder, and she turned to see a fleeting shadow disappearing quickly. Desperate, Emily decided to leave her apartment, but when she opened the door, she found a folded note on the floor. The note had a message written in shaky handwriting. "If you want to live, Don't go after what you're seeking. With her heart racing and fear written on her face, Emily sought a safe place. She headed to the cafe where she had met Sarah, hoping to find temporary refuge. But when she arrived, she found the place empty and in disarray, as if it had been recently searched. The cafe appeared to have been abandoned in haste, and a sense of dread overcame her. Realizing she was being hunted, Emily understood that the Council of Shadows was becoming more aggressive. She tried to call Agatha for guidance, but all lines were cut, as if there was a deliberate attempt to isolate her. The feeling of being surrounded was palpable, and Emily was beginning to grasp that her previous actions had severe repercussions. In a desperate attempt to protect herself and find a solution, Emily decided to seek refuge in a location mentioned in the Guardian's diary, an ancient underground library known only to those who understood the city's deepest secrets. The library was hidden beneath the old city, accessible only by a concealed tunnel. As she ventured through the dark, damp tunnels leading to the library, Emily felt the growing tension. The echo of her footsteps seemed to amplify the sensation of being watched. With every turn and every secret door she passed, the fear transformed into a desperate urgency to find answers and protection. Finally, upon entering the library, Emily found a safe haven, but also a new set of challenges. The place was filled with ancient texts and grimoires that could hold the key to confronting the Council of Shadows. However, the security she found in the library was fragile, and the feeling that the hunt was just beginning never left her. As Emily immersed herself in the ancient texts, the awareness that the fight was far from over became ever more present. She was engulfed in a war that threatened to consume everything she knew, and the only way to survive was to confront her fear and seek the truth behind the threat looming over her life. Emily had found a moment of respite in the ancient underground library, but the peace was only temporary. The feeling that the Council of Shadows was always lurking kept her on constant alert. As she studied the grimoires and ancient texts, a new concern was forming in her mind. She needed allies to confront the approaching threat. During her research, Emily came across references to a group of witches who considered themselves protectors of ancient knowledge and white magic. This group, known as the Keepers of Knowledge, was a distinct faction from the Guardians of Light, focused on preserving and sharing esoteric knowledge. They were known for their secrecy and discretion, but Emily decided she needed to find them. The search led Emily to an old market of rare books and occult items hidden on a narrow, seldom-traveled street. The shop was small and seemed straight out of a dark fairy tale, with shelves crammed with old volumes and mystical objects. Emily asked the owner about the Keepers of Knowledge, and he directed her to a mysterious woman named Isolde, a well-known expert in magic and occultism. Isolde was an enigmatic woman with deep eyes and extensive knowledge of the occult. When Emily introduced herself and shared her story, Isolde listened attentively, her look of concern growing more intense as Emily recounted recent events. Isolde revealed that she knew the Keepers of Knowledge and that they could be the key to facing the Council of Shadows. With a gesture of invitation, Isolde took Emily to a secret meeting of the Keepers. The location was an underground room hidden in an old Manchester building, filled with candles, mystical symbols, and ancient scrolls. The Keepers were a diverse and profound group, with members from various backgrounds and magical skills. They received Emily with a mix of curiosity and respect, immediately understanding the gravity of her situation. During the meeting, Emily was introduced to several members of the Keepers. Among them was Lucian, a skilled mage with deep knowledge of ancient rituals, Helena, an herbalist and healer with expertise in potions and enchantments, and Marcus, a historian who had studied ancient witchcraft practices and could offer valuable insights into the Council of Shadows. The Keepers listened to Emily's story and reviewed the ancient texts she had brought from the library. Lucian identified an ancient spell that could protect against the dark magic of the Council, while Helena prepared a potion to enhance Emily's protection. Marcus helped decipher a fragment of a scroll that revealed details about the Council's tactics and weaknesses. Collaborating with the Keepers gave Emily a new sense of hope and readiness. They explained that the Council of Shadows was seeking an ancient artifact, a talisman that, if recovered, could grant them unimaginable power. Emily's goal, along with her new allies, was to find and protect this artifact before it fell into the wrong hands. With the Keepers by her side, Emily felt that the approaching battle was now a bit more even. Their help provided not only knowledge and skills, but also renewed strength and determination. In a world filled with darkness and danger, these unexpected allies were now the light guiding Emily on her journey. After aligning with the Keepers of Knowledge, Emily felt a new wave of determination. With the help of Lucian, Helena, and Marcus, she was preparing for one of the most crucial parts of the mission, finding and protecting the ancient talisman that the Council of Shadows desperately wanted. The Keepers believed that the artifact was hidden in an ancient and protected location, a secret chamber in one of Manchester's oldest ruins, known as the Crypt of Secrets. It was a place shrouded in mystery, only mentioned in ancient texts and local legends, and many believed it to be a mere myth. The entrance to the crypt was a secret passage located in an old cemetery, partially buried under vegetation and forgotten by time. With the guidance of the Keepers, Emily and her allies found the location and began exploring the narrow, damp passage. The tunnel was filled with ancient symbols, and a sense of anticipation hung in the air. As they advanced through the dark corridors of the crypt, Emily felt the atmosphere change. It was as if the very structure was alive, pulsating with an ancient and powerful energy. The walls were adorned with enigmatic inscriptions and images that seemed to come alive under the light of the lanterns they carried. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber, the heart of the crypt. The space was filled with an aura of grandeur and mystery. In the center of the room, on a stone altar, was the talisman, an ancient-looking object covered in a layer of dust and inscribed with glowing runes. The talisman seemed to emit a faint glow, indicating its power and importance. However, as Emily approached the altar, the environment began to change alarmingly. A sense of imminent danger enveloped the room, and the ground started to tremble slightly. A hooded figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a supernatural light. It was one of the Council of Shadows members who had arrived before them. The confrontation was inevitable. Emily and her allies were prepared, but the dark mage displayed impressive skills in dark magic. Dark spells were cast, and the environment turned into a chaotic battlefield where lights and shadows intertwined in a frenzied dance. Lucian and Helena joined forces to create a magical shield to protect the group, while Marcus tried to find a way to neutralize the enemy's magic. Emily, feeling the pressure, focused on the talisman, knowing that protecting it was crucial to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The battle intensified, and the dark mage seemed increasingly determined to reclaim the artifact. The crypt's floor was covered in dust and debris, and the fight seemed endless. In an act of courage and desperation, Emily used a protection spell she had learned from the Keepers to confront the mage. At the climax of the battle, Emily managed to use the talisman to temporarily seal the dark mage's power. The artifact, in her hands, shone with an intense light, and a powerful force emerged, pushing the enemy away and returning a sense of calm to the room. The dark mage retreated, disappearing into the shadows with a cry of anger and frustration. With the battle over and the artifact protected, Emily and the Keepers examined the crypt and the talisman. The experience had been exhausting, but the feeling of victory was palpable. They had succeeded in protecting the crucial artifact and had taken a significant step in their fight against the Council of Shadows. The Crypt of Secrets, now silent again, seemed almost at peace. Emily knew that the war was far from over, But the victory that night brought a glimmer of hope and a boost to her determination to face what was still to come. With the talisman now secured and the Council of Shadows in retreat, Emily and the Keepers prepared for the impending final confrontation. The artifact had been a game-changer, but the battle to protect Manchester and prevent the advance of dark forces was far from over. The Keepers discovered that the Council of Shadows had organized a secret meeting in an old abandoned theater on the outskirts of the city. The theater, known as the Theater of Echoes, had a dark history and had been the site of several sinister events over the years. It was the perfect place for a gathering of dark witches and wizards planning their next major move. Emily and the Keepers meticulously prepared for the mission. They knew the confrontation would be intense and that the battle would be for the survival not just of themselves, but of the entire city. With protective spells and magical weapons at the ready, they headed to the theater under the cover of night. Upon arriving at the Theater of Echoes, the atmosphere was thick with palpable malevolent energy. The building was grand but decaying, with torn curtains and dusty chairs that seemed to watch in silence. Emily and the Keepers moved cautiously, aware that even the smallest mistake could mean their doom. Inside the theater, the Council of Shadows was in the midst of a ritual. The space was lit by black candles and surrounded by occult symbols. The leader of the council, an imposing figure with eyes glowing with sinister power, was at the center of the ritual, preparing to summon a dark force that could alter Manchester's fate. Emily and the Keepers positioned themselves strategically around the room, waiting for the right moment to act. Lucian and Helena cast protective spells and enchantments to neutralize the council's magic, while Marcus studied the ritual to find a way to dismantle it. When the moment came, Emily and her allies struck with force. Bright spells and defensive magic clashed with the council's dark sorcery in an epic battle that illuminated the theater with a supernatural glow. The walls vibrated with magical energy, and the floor seemed to tremble under the impact of the enchantments. Emily found herself face to face with the leader of the council. The confrontation was intense and personal, with the leader casting dark spells and Emily using all the skills she had learned. The battle was a frenetic dance of light and shadows, testing their agility and willpower to the limit. As the fight raged on, the talisman that Emily had protected began to glow intensely, reacting to the power of the ritual being performed. Emily realized that the talisman had the ability to destabilize the dark magic and decided to use it to interrupt the ritual. With a cry of determination, Emily raised the talisman and channeled its energy to break the circle of dark magic. The light from the artifact expanded, enveloping the leader of the council in a beam of intense brightness. The ritual was interrupted, and the dark energy being summoned began to dissipate, weakening the council's forces. The leader of the council, now weakened and furious, tried to resist, but the combined force of the Keepers and the power of the talisman was enough to defeat him. The theater, once filled with an aura of terror, began to regain a sense of calm and serenity as the dark magic dissipated. When the battle was finally over, the Theater of Echoes was in ruins, but the victory was clear. The Council of Shadows had been defeated, and the sinister ritual that threatened to destroy Manchester was thwarted. Exhausted but triumphant, Emily and the Keepers watched the sunrise with a sense of relief and accomplishment. The final confrontation had tested their limits and demonstrated the strength of their unity and determination. Manchester was safe for now, but Emily knew that the world of magic and secrets would never be completely peaceful. The battle was won, but vigilance and preparedness would remain essential in protecting against the forces of darkness. After the victory over the Council of Shadows, Manchester seemed to have regained a sense of normalcy. The Theater of Echoes, though damaged, was no longer the site of a sinister ritual. However, Emily and the Keepers knew that the peace was fragile and that the newly restored balance needed to be protected. As the Keepers began to repair the damage and restore security, Emily felt a growing weight in her heart. The celebrations of victory were accompanied by a sense of loss and an unsettling premonition. There was something that didn't fit the narrative of the battle, a missing piece that Emily needed to understand. It was then that Isolde, the enigmatic keeper, approached Emily with a serious look. She revealed a truth Emily hadn't expected. The talisman, despite its power, was not complete. During the council's ritual, the artifact had been used to disrupt the dark magic, but the final piece of the talisman, a gem essential to its true power, was missing. The gem was a vital component that had been stolen and lost a long time ago. Isolde explained that the gem was in the possession of a separate faction, an organization with its own dark intentions. This faction had been involved in manipulations and intrigues, waiting for the right moment to use the gem for their own purposes. The absence of the gem meant that, while the immediate threat of the Council of Shadows had been neutralized, a new and potentially more dangerous threat was looming. Now aware of the gravity of the situation, Emily faced a difficult choice. She could try to recover the gem and ensure the talisman was restored to its full potential, or she could try to move on and leave the responsibility to the keepers. But, as always, the weight of responsibility and her determination to protect those she loved pushed her forward. The keepers were willing to help, but recovering the gem would require a dangerous and complex journey. Emily knew she needed to proceed, not only to ensure the safety of Manchester, but also to confront a personal truth about her own strength and role in the fight against dark forces. The quest to recover the gem took Emily and the keepers to an ancient fortress hidden in the hills around Manchester. The fortress was a place of legends and forgotten stories, and its location was known only to a few who had studied the city's hidden history. Upon reaching the fortress, they encountered an atmosphere of oppression and ancient magic. The place was filled with traps and enchantments designed to protect the gem and conceal the secret of its location. Emily, with her allies' help, had to face challenges and puzzles that tested not only her magical abilities, but also her courage and determination. Finally, Emily and the keepers arrived at an underground chamber where they found the gem. It was guarded by a powerful enchantment, and the fight to retrieve it was fierce. Emily used all her knowledge and skills to break the enchantments and secure the gem. The effort required a personal sacrifice. The magical energy Emily used to obtain the gem left her exhausted and weakened. Returning with the gem, the feeling of accomplishment mixed with exhaustion. The talisman was finally restored to its complete form, and its power was securely sealed. Manchester was safe once more, but the cost of victory was evident. The revelation that Emily had made a personal sacrifice to ensure the artifacts and the city's safety did not go unnoticed by the keepers. They recognized her bravery and dedication, and although the journey had been arduous, Emily's strength and resilience were now apparent. The sacrifice made had not only protected Manchester, but also solidified Emily's role as a true defender against the forces of darkness. After the restoration of the talisman and the defeat of the dark forces, the city of Manchester began to return to normal. Emily and the Keepers of Knowledge were exhausted but relieved. The immediate threat had been neutralized, and peace seemed to have been restored. However, the feeling that something was still unresolved lingered over Emily. Time passed, and Emily continued working with the Keepers to ensure that the magical protections around the city remained intact. During one of these sessions, Isolde requested a private meeting with Emily. There was something urgent and serious in her tone. In a small room lit by candles, Isolde revealed a disturbing truth to Emily. While examining old records and battle logs, she had uncovered evidence that the Council of Shadows was not the only faction with dark intentions. There was a larger conspiracy at play, a web of influences and manipulations that extended beyond anything anyone had imagined. Isolde explained that the true nature of the threat was tied to an ancient prophecy, which spoke of a circle of darkness, a secret alliance of magical beings and humans seeking to dominate the hidden world and subvert the balance between good and evil. The prophecy mentioned that by gathering all the fragments of an ancient artifact, immense power could be unleashed. The gem from the talisman that Emily had recovered was only one piece of a larger puzzle. The truth lay in how all the pieces connected and the crucial role each fragment played. The prophecy also mentioned a dark leader who was preparing to emerge and take control, a being who had been manipulating events from the shadows and was now on the verge of revealing themselves. With this new revelation, Emily understood that the battle was far from over. The Council of Shadows had been a part of a larger game, and the real fight would be against the Circle of Darkness. The Dark Leader, still lurking in the shadows, was about to act, and the fate of Manchester, and possibly the magical world, was in danger. Emily and Isolde decided to form a broader alliance, gathering all available allies and resources. It was time to prepare Manchester for what was to come, to gather ancient knowledge, and to form a united front against the new enemy. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but Emily knew that the truth had finally come to light. What seemed like a victory was just the beginning of a new journey. The Circle of Darkness was the ultimate threat, and facing it would require courage, strategy, and a deep understanding of the true extent of the forces manipulating destiny. As the city prepared to face the new threat, Emily reflected on her journey. What started as curiosity about a macabre video had turned into an epic battle full of challenges and sacrifices. Now, with the truth revealed and a new mission ahead, Emily was ready to face whatever came next. The story was far from over, and the road ahead was full of uncertainties. But with renewed determination and the knowledge that the battle against the dark forces would continue, Emily prepared to face the next chapter of her journey, a journey that would test all the limits of her courage and strength.